Woman left at the altar, but a mysterious millionaire who attended the ceremony changes her life forever. She stood there, frozen, dressed in white, surrounded by flowers, cameras, and guests, but no groom. Her fingers trembled, not from the cold, but from the shock. The whispers started. 1,000 eyes burned into her, and that's when she saw him. The stranger at the back who hadn't looked away once. The man who would change everything. The chapel was silent, almost too perfect. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting soft colors over white roses, velvet benches, and an aisle lined with silk petals. It was supposed to be the most beautiful day of her life. But for Isabel, it was the beginning of something she never saw coming. She was 29, a journalist with dreams bigger than the small town she grew up in. Independent, proud, and, until today, absolutely certain she was marrying the love of her life. Daniel was charming, successful, the kind of man who could light up a room with his confidence. They met 4 years ago during a political rally she was covering, and he swept her off her feet in a whirlwind romance that felt like a movie. Today was their wedding day. The soft music started. Her heart pounded. She took a deep breath behind the tall oak doors of the church, clutching her bouquet so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Ready?" her father asked, his voice warm but unsure. He must have felt something, a hesitation maybe. But Isabel nodded, forcing a smile. The doors opened, and the world felt like it was holding its breath. People stood, turned, smiled. Cameras flashed. Her mother was already crying, the good kind of tears. Isabel walked slowly, gracefully. Each step felt heavier. But it wasn't nerves. It was something else. Something deeper. Like her gut knew before her mind could process it. She looked ahead, and that's when it hit her. The altar was empty. No Daniel. No best man. No note. No explanation. Just gone. The music faltered. The whispers started like a wave, soft at first, then louder. Friends exchanging glances. Her aunt whispered to her uncle. One of the bridesmaids gasped. The priest looked confused, checking his watch. Isabel stopped halfway down the aisle. Everything inside her collapsed. She blinked, hoping, praying. This was some cruel prank. That any second now Daniel would run in, say something about traffic or a surprise or anything. But seconds became minutes, and minutes became silence. And then the silence became humiliation. Her father walked to her side, trying to speak, but Isabel couldn't hear anything anymore. Her ears rang. Her throat tightened. The tears refused to come. It was too soon. Too much. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. Then, from the very back of the church, someone stood. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit different from the guests. He wasn't holding a phone or whispering like everyone else. He was just watching, calm, almost solemn, as if he knew this would happen. Their eyes met. She didn't know him, not even a little, but something about the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding, made her hold her head up, even when her heart was breaking. Isabel turned around. She walked away from the altar, away from the stares, the questions, the pain. She stepped out of the church into the cold spring air, alone. The next hour was a blur. Her father tried calling Daniel. His phone went straight to voicemail. The groomsmen didn't know anything. His family had no answers. Eventually, someone confirmed it. He had left the city the night before. No goodbye, no letter, just vanished. Her mother sobbed. Her friends tried to rally around her. But Isabel didn't cry. Not yet. She just sat on a bench outside the church, the veil crumpled in her lap, staring at the sidewalk. And that's when he approached. The stranger. He didn't say a word at first, just stood beside her, hands in his pockets. She barely noticed him until he spoke. "You don't have to pretend you're okay." His voice was low, steady. She looked up, unsure how to respond. I wasn't pretending, she said, her tone flat. He didn't push, just nodded slightly, then sat beside her. Not too close, just enough to feel human. Real. You don't know me, she said. I know you're stronger than everyone in there, he replied. That was the most graceful thing I've ever seen. She turned to face him. Who are you? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Someone who doesn't like seeing good people hurt. That should have sounded strange, creepy even. But something about him, the way he spoke, the calmness in his voice, made her feel a little less alone. And for the first time all day, she felt the tears coming, slow at first, then unstoppable. He didn't move, didn't reach out, just sat there letting her cry, letting her fall apart without trying to fix her, and that meant everything. When she finally wiped her face, she turned to him again. You still haven't told me your name. He hesitated. Matthew. She nodded, eyes red and swollen. Thank you, Matthew. He stood. Take care of yourself, Isabel. And just like that, he was gone. No card, no number, just a name and a presence she couldn't explain. She didn't know then, but that moment, sitting outside the church in a wedding dress beside a stranger, would be the first chapter of the story that would change her life forever. The headlines hit by morning. Abandoned bride. Journalist Isabel March left at the altar. Where is Daniel Hart, the fiancé who disappeared? Heartbreak in silk and lace. Isabel didn't read any of them. She stayed home for 3 days, curtains drawn, phone off. The once beautiful apartment she and Daniel picked out together now felt like a mausoleum of broken promises, photos, invitations, decorations still untouched. The closet held his clothes like ghosts. His toothbrush sat by the sink like he might come back. But he wouldn't. She knew that now. What hurt most wasn't just that he left. It was that he didn't even try to explain. No note, no apology, no reason. People speculated everything. Cold feet, secret affair, runaway groom. Isabel didn't care. The silence was louder than any excuse he could have given, and in that silence, her world cracked. But something inside her, something fierce and deep, refused to let her stay broken. On the 4th day, she got up, showered, got dressed, brushed her hair, put on lipstick. Then she opened her laptop. The blinking cursor stared back at her. For the first time in a week, she wanted to write. Not a story for work, not a headline, but something honest. Raw. She titled the file, To the Woman Who Thinks It's Her Fault. And she wrote. Word after word, paragraph after paragraph, about shame, about grief, about the awful silence that comes after a goodbye that never happens. About how the world tells women to smile through the pain and be grateful someone loved them almost. She didn't name Daniel. She didn't need to. She published it anonymously on a blog she hadn't used in years. No expectations, no tags, just her truth, finally out in the world. It exploded. Thousands of views in hours, tens of thousands in a day. The post was shared by influencers, therapists, celebrities. People sent messages, some angry, most grateful, many heartbroken. Women told her stories they'd never told anyone else. Men apologized to exes. Strangers called her brave. And through it all, she stayed quiet. Just reading, watching, breathing again. Until she got a message with no subject line. Just 2 words. Well written. She opened it. A private email, no name, no icon. But something about it made her blink. That voice, or at least the way it felt, reminded her of someone. Matthew? No reply. She wasn't sure why, but she wrote back anyway. Thank you. I didn't expect anyone to read it. This time it took 2 hours. Pain speaks louder than any headline. You wrote it like someone who lived it. People feel that. A strange warmth bloomed in her chest. She smiled for the first time in days. They exchanged more emails. Not romantic? Not yet. Just real. He never asked personal questions. Never mentioned the wedding. He just talked about books, music, life. She learned he traveled a lot, that he didn't do social media, that he preferred dogs to people and jazz over pop. She told him she hated Sundays because they used to be her favorite, that she hadn't thrown the wedding dress away yet, but planned to, that she kept hearing the silence in that church every time she closed her eyes. He never offered advice, he just listened. It was the kind of connection that doesn't make sense on paper, but felt more real than anything she'd had in a long time. Then one day he wrote, "You're going to get an offer soon. Take it." She stared at the screen, confused. What offer? No reply. The next morning, her editor called. A well-known digital magazine wanted to syndicate her blog post and offer her a guest column, weekly, full creative control. She would be anonymous at first, but if she ever wanted to go public, the door was open. Isabel's jaw dropped. "Did you have something to do with this?" she typed, fingers trembling. Matthew's reply was almost instant. "Does it matter?" She laughed, out loud. She hadn't laughed like that in weeks, maybe months. She didn't know who he really was, or what he wanted, but something in her heart told her, he sees you, and he believes in you, and that matters. Still, curiosity grew like a splinter she couldn't pull out. So one night she wrote, "Why were you at my wedding, Matthew? You said you don't like seeing good people hurt, but that doesn't explain why you were there." He didn't reply for 2 days. Then, at 2:34 a.m., she got a message. "I'll tell you, but not over email. Let's meet." Her breath caught. The message had a location, a time, tonight. A small, cozy restaurant by the river, the kind she loved. She hadn't told him that. Her heart pounded as she typed, "Okay." The city was quieter at night. Isabel stood across the street from the restaurant, wrapped in a long beige coat, heart racing, the kind of nerves she hadn't felt in years, not first date nerves, no. Something deeper. A sense that whatever was about to happen might matter more than she was ready for. She almost turned around, twice. But then she saw him, through the window, in a corner booth, facing the door like he'd been waiting for hours, even though she was 10 minutes early. Matthew looked exactly like she remembered, calm, unbothered, like life never rushed him. Black button-up shirt, sleeves rolled, no tie. The same steady gaze that had once held her together outside a broken ceremony. She stepped inside. He stood up. No handshake, no awkward hug, just a small nod, and that quiet, unreadable smile. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." He didn't deny it. They sat, ordered wine. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was something thick in the air, not tension, but meaning, like the space between them was heavy with all the things unsaid. "So," she began, fingers lightly tapping the glass, "you said you'd tell me why you were at my wedding." "I did." Silence again. He looked at her, not past her, not around her, just at her, fully, present. "I knew Daniel," he said. Her heart skipped. "What?" "We went to college together. Different circles, but close enough. I knew what he was like back then. And I kept hearing about him again, especially once your engagement was all over the papers. The name rang a bell, so I looked him up and I saw you." She leaned in slightly, confused, intrigued. "I read your work," he continued, "long before the wedding. Your coverage on the refugee crisis, the piece about the teachers' strike in Baltimore. Brilliant, by the way. You were following my journalism? I follow good writing. You happen to be one of the best I've read in a long time." That made her blush, unexpectedly. "But why come to the wedding? Why not warn me if you knew something?" He exhaled slowly, regret in every line of his face. "Because I wasn't sure. I didn't want to meddle. I thought maybe he'd changed. Maybe he'd grown up. But a part of me needed to see for myself. And when he didn't show, I hated being right." The words hit like a wave, All this time, she'd thought Matthew was just a stranger with good timing. But he wasn't. He had been watching from a distance. Not out of obsession, but concern. Quiet concern. The kind that doesn't demand credit. The kind that just wants you to be okay. "I don't know if that's sweet or terrifying," she said, half joking. "Probably both," he replied, smiling for real this time. "But I swear I never had bad intentions. I just couldn't ignore it." She stared at her wine, swirling it slowly. "Everyone else left after the disaster. Even my friends couldn't look me in the eye, but you stayed." He shrugged lightly. I've seen people leave when it's hard. I decided a long time ago that I wouldn't be one of them." For a long time, neither of them said a word. And then, as the food arrived, they talked. Not about the past, but about everything else. Movies, books, cities they wanted to visit, childhood dreams. She told him about her obsession with piano music, even though she never learned to play. He confessed he once ran from a job at a hedge fund to volunteer in South America because, in his words, the money was good, but my soul wasn't. Time slipped by unnoticed. Hours disappeared like smoke. By the time they stepped outside, the night had turned colder. He walked her to her car. "I don't really know what this is," she said honestly, "but I'm glad it's happening." "Same," he said, and then he added, "You don't owe anyone a timeline, Isabel, especially not yourself. Just keep choosing what feels real." She nodded, heart full in a way she hadn't felt since before Daniel. "Good night, Matthew." He smiled again. "Good night, writer." She drove home with the windows down. The city smelled like rain, and for the first time in weeks, the future didn't terrify her. It felt wide open, like a blank page waiting. The next few weeks were quiet and golden. They didn't rush anything. Coffee turned into lunch. Emails turned into calls. And slowly, almost without realizing it, Isabel found herself looking forward to the next message, the next walk, the next unexpected joke that made her laugh like a kid again. But something still lingered in the back of her mind. Who was Matthew, really? He avoided questions about his work, changed the subject when she asked where he lived. He always paid in cash, never let her follow him on social media, not even LinkedIn. He wasn't hiding something, not exactly, but he wasn't saying something either. And Isabel had spent too much of her life believing in stories that fell apart to ignore her instincts now. One evening, as they walked through a park near her apartment, watching kids play under fading daylight, she finally asked, "Why do I feel like I'm only getting half of you?" Matthew stopped walking. He didn't look offended, just sad. "Because I'm not used to being seen like this," he said, "by someone who actually matters." Isabel didn't blink. "Let me." He met her eyes, and that was when everything started to change. The next day, he didn't call or text, no email, no subtle comment on her new column, not even a cryptic two-word message like before. Nothing. Isabel tried not to spiral. Maybe he was busy. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, something had shifted. She could feel it, like a string that had been gently pulled too far and now hung loose between them. On the third day, she caved. She called, straight to voicemail. She left a message. Simple, direct. "Hey, just checking in. I hope you're okay." Still nothing. That evening, she went for a walk alone. The streets were buzzing with life. Couples laughing outside cafes, dogs pulling their leashes toward squirrels, teenagers blasting music from car speakers. But Isabel felt strangely invisible. She sat on a bench, the same kind they'd sat on weeks ago. The air smelled like cinnamon from a nearby bakery. Somewhere in the distance, a violinist played softly. She closed her eyes. "Can I sit?" Her heart nearly stopped. She opened her eyes, and there he was. Matthew. Same calm expression. Same dark jacket. But there was something behind his eyes now. A heaviness. A hesitation. Like he'd been carrying too much for too long. "Where have you been?" she asked quietly. "I needed to decide something," he said. "About what?" "About whether I was ready for this." Her stomach tightened. Matthew sat beside her, staring ahead like he couldn't quite meet her gaze. "There's something I haven't told you," he began. "Something big. And if I tell you, it changes everything." Isabel turned toward him. "Then tell me." A long pause. "I didn't just work in finance," he said finally. "I built something, years ago, a startup. It was nothing at first, but it grew. Fast, really fast." She blinked. "Like, how fast?" He looked at her now. "I sold it at 29, walked away with just under $80 million. Her breath caught. 80 million. "I've been called a lot of things," he continued. "Genius, lucky, workaholic. Some called me a ghost, because I never stayed long. After I sold the company, I disappeared from that world, traveled, gave a lot of it away, hid from the rest. I hated what success turned me into." Isabel just sat there, speechless. "Money makes people weird," he said. "Friends changed, family treated me like a wallet, and every woman I met, they saw the number before they saw me." She finally found her voice. "But I didn't. I know. That's why I kept it from you. I needed to know if what we had was real." She looked down at her hands. It wasn't anger she felt. It was confusion. This man who had been so open emotionally, the one who'd seen her pain and never looked away, had been hiding a huge part of his life. "Do you trust me?" she asked softly. "With everything," he said without blinking. "Then don't ever lie to me again." Matthew nodded, quiet, grateful. "I never wanted to lie. I just didn't want the money to be what defined me, or us." She stood. He looked up, unsure what she was about to do. She held out her hand. "Then let me know the real you, all of it. Not the curated version, not the one who shows up like a hero and vanishes. I want the whole mess, Matthew, just like you've seen mine." For a second he just stared at her, like he wasn't used to being chosen without conditions. Then he stood and took her hand. And in that moment something cracked open between them. Not love yet, not exactly, but possibility. Real, tangible, terrifying possibility. That night, they talked until 3 a.m. He told her about the first check he wrote to a school in Detroit that had no textbooks, about the foundation he started under a different name, about the times he bought an entire shelter new blankets just because he could, but also about the loneliness, the way he stopped trusting people, the panic attacks, the guilt for wanting more even when he had everything. And Isabel listened. No judgment, just quiet understanding. At one point, she said, "You know what the real tragedy is?" "What?" "You've been hiding who you are to protect yourself, and I've been doing the same to protect my heart. Maybe we both forgot how to be fully seen." Matthew nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time we stop hiding." By the end of the week, everything changed. They started spending more time together, openly now. No more mysterious silences, no more guessing. They cooked dinner in her apartment, took long walks, argued about books, made fun of bad movies. But more than anything, they healed. Not by fixing each other, but by showing up. There were moments, of course, when it all felt fragile, like glass. But love, real love, isn't about avoiding pain. It's about being brave enough to keep choosing someone, even on the days when you're afraid. And Isabel was choosing him. And for the first time in a long time, he was letting himself be chosen. It started as an ordinary morning. Sunlight poured through the blinds of Isabel's apartment. The smell of coffee lingered in the air. Matthew was in the kitchen, humming an old jazz tune while slicing strawberries. Isabel sat on the couch, wrapped in one of his sweaters, scrolling through old emails for an article she was writing. Then she saw it. A subject line she didn't recognize. To Isabel, "In case you ever need the truth." It was from Daniel. dated 2 days after the wedding. Her heart stopped. She didn't want to open it. She really didn't. Everything inside her screamed to delete it, pretend it never appeared. But her fingers clicked before her mind caught up. The email was long, too long, but every word felt like a match thrown on gasoline. I wasn't ready. I thought I was, but I'm not the man you think I am, and I couldn't let you find out after we were already married. You deserve someone who actually knows how to love. I never did. I never even tried. There's another reason, too, and it's one I couldn't bring myself to say out loud. His name is Matthew Callahan. The screen blurred. She blinked once, twice. Matthew's name. In Daniel's letter. She kept reading. He reached out to me a month before the wedding. Told me he knew what kind of man I was. I thought he was bluffing at first. Some jealous ex or rich stalker. But he knew everything. The lies, the cheating, the girl in Atlanta, the gambling, everything I'd hidden. He told me if I truly cared about you, I'd walk away, and he was right. I wanted to hate him. I tried. But in the end, he was the only person thinking about you. Isabel couldn't breathe. She looked up, eyes wild, mouth open, and saw Matthew walking in with 2 cups of coffee and the kindest smile in the world. It shattered her. You knew, she said, voice shaking. You made him leave me. Matthew froze. The color drained from his face. You weren't supposed to see that, he said softly. Her hands clenched the laptop. I can't believe this. I thought you stayed by accident. I thought you were there for me. But this was calculated. It wasn't, he began. Don't lie to me, Matthew, she snapped, tears already rising. You manipulated my life, my future. You decided what was best for me without even telling me. I was protecting you. You were controlling me. Those words landed like bullets. Matthew stepped back, pain etched in every line of his face. I didn't tell you because I knew how it would sound. Like I was trying to be some savior. Like I wanted you to owe me. She laughed, bitter and broken. Isn't that exactly what you did? No, he said, firmer now. I didn't do it so you'd fall in love with me. I did it because I saw the way you looked at him, and I knew he was going to ruin you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And maybe I needed to be ruined first. That broke him. Completely. I'm sorry, he said. I really thought I was helping, but maybe I was just selfish. She turned away. She couldn't look at him anymore. I need time, she whispered. I'll wait, he said. And then, after a long, shaky breath, he added, even if it's forever. And then he was gone. The days that followed were a storm of silence. She didn't write, didn't eat much, didn't leave the house. How could she? How do you process the fact that the man who saved you also stole your choice? It wasn't just betrayal. It was grief. Because part of her had already started to believe in forever. And now, forever felt like a lie. She tried to be angry, furious even, but deep down, buried under the ache, there was something worse than rage. Understanding. He had protected her. Daniel was going to hurt her. And if she were honest, brutally honest, she would have begged someone to stop her that day if she had known the truth. But that didn't erase what Matthew had done. It just complicated it. Everything was too tangled now. Love, truth, control, redemption. Could she forgive him? Should she? She didn't know. Not yet. One night, nearly a week later, she got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just her name. Handwritten. No stamp. Inside was a letter. Real ink. Real paper. Real emotions. I didn't fall in love with you at the wedding. I fell in love with you the moment I read your words, long before you knew I existed. I didn't come to that church to interfere. I came to make sure the woman I admired from a distance wasn't being destroyed by a man I knew wasn't worthy of her. I didn't expect you to see me, and I never expected you to forgive me. But if there's still a chance, then I'll be wherever you need me to be, even if it's far away. No signature, just one last line. You taught me how to feel again. I only wish I'd let you choose it freely. Isabel read it twice, then 3 times. And slowly, a tear slid down her cheek. Because love, real love, is never perfect. It's messy, flawed, human. But sometimes, it's worth fighting for anyway. The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror staring at herself like she didn't quite recognize who she was anymore. Her eyes were tired but clear. Her heart still bruised, but not broken. And for the first time since that day in the chapel, Isabel didn't feel like a victim. She felt powerful, even if she didn't know what to do with that power yet. She folded the letter and placed it in a box, the same box where she'd once kept her wedding vows, where she had written promises to a man who never planned to keep his own. But that box no longer held pain. It held lessons, warnings, and maybe, just maybe, hope. That afternoon she got a call. It was from Stella, her best friend, one of the few who'd stayed quiet during the storm because she knew Isabel needed space more than advice. I saw him, Stella said, today, at the old bookstore on 9th. He didn't see me. Isabel's breath hitched. Was he okay? He looked like someone who hasn't been sleeping, and I'm pretty sure he walked out without buying the book he'd been holding for 20 minutes. That sounded like him. Do you miss him? Stella asked gently. I don't even know what I'm allowed to feel, Isabel admitted. I'm angry. I'm grateful. I'm confused, but yes, I miss him. So what are you gonna do? There was a long pause. Then Isabel said something she hadn't said in years. I'm going to stop running. She waited until evening, put on a dark coat, tied her hair up, and walked the 8 blocks to the bookstore. Her heart raced with every step, the city a blur of lights and shadows around her. The little bell above the door jingled when she walked in. There he was, in the poetry aisle, reading something by Neruda, of course. He didn't see her at first, but when he did, everything stopped. No words, just stunned silence. She stepped closer, slowly, like she might spook him. Hey, she said, voice soft. Hey, he replied, eyes wide with disbelief. You came. I wasn't sure I would. I wasn't sure I deserved it. Isabel looked at the book in his hand, then back at him. I read your letter. I meant every word. I know. A pause. Then she asked the question that had haunted her for days. Why didn't you tell me the truth yourself? Matthew looked down at the book, like it was easier than meeting her eyes. Because I thought if I told you everything, I'd lose you, and I was scared. Which is ironic since I already did. She crossed her arms, more for comfort than defiance. You made a choice for me. I did. That wasn't love. No, he agreed. It was fear, pretending to be love. Silence again. The space between them small, but filled with everything unsaid. And then Isabel stepped closer. One thing I've learned, she said quietly, is that people who really care will mess up, but they'll show up anyway. And you did. Matthew's voice cracked just a little. You still trust me? I don't know if I do. He nodded, accepting that. But, she added, I'm willing to try. If you are. His breath caught. For a second he couldn't speak. Then he whispered, more than anything. They walked the city after that. No destination, no script. Just 2 people trying to rebuild something delicate and real. Not from the ashes of a fantasy, but from the truth. They talked about boundaries, about honesty, about fear, about how love doesn't mean always being right. It means being brave enough to admit when you're wrong, and staying anyway. They didn't hold hands, not yet, but their shoulders brushed every now and then. And that was enough. 2 weeks later, Isabel received an email from a major publishing house. They'd read her anonymous blog. They knew who she was. They wanted to offer her a book deal, a memoir about healing, heartbreak, and starting over. Her fingers trembled as she read the offer. The terms were generous. The reach was massive. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the message. The same one Matthew had told her, and that she'd finally started to believe. Your story matters. That night, she and Matthew sat on her balcony with glasses of wine and a blanket between them. The city stretched below them, glowing and restless. I think I'm going to do it, she said. The book? She nodded. But I want to write it honestly. Even the ugly parts. Even the parts about you. He didn't flinch. I wouldn't expect anything less. And if I tell the world what you did, then they'll know I'm human, he said, and that I loved a woman enough to make a mistake trying to protect her. Isabel turned to him. There it was again. That steadiness, that maddening, beautiful calm. But this time, it didn't feel like a mask. It felt like home. And then, without thinking, she leaned in and kissed him. Not out of impulse, not to erase the past, but because for the first time since she stood at that altar alone, she wanted to choose love again. And this time, it was her choice. 1 year later, the cafe on the corner of 6th and Bell still made the best cappuccinos in the city. Isabel sat by the window, tapping her pen against the edge of her notebook. Her publisher had been kind, patient, but the final chapter of her memoir was still blank. Not because she didn't know how the story ended, but because some endings are too personal to put on paper right away. The door chimed. Matthew walked in, 2 coffees in hand. He hadn't changed much, still wore the same black coat when it rained, still had that quiet presence that made the whole world slow down when he entered a room. But something had changed, in both of them. They were no longer running, no longer hiding, no longer afraid of the truth, theirs or each other's. She smiled as he sat down. You're late, she teased. He held up the drinks. Worth the wait. She reached for her cup, fingers brushing his. That simple touch still lit sparks beneath her skin. I got the first copy, she said, pulling a small hardcover book from her bag and placing it on the table. On the cover, in elegant gold lettering, was the title, Almost Married, a true story about what happens after I don't. He ran his fingers over the title. You really did it. We did, she corrected. He looked up, eyes soft. You okay with the world knowing everything? She shrugged. It's not everything. The world gets the story. I get you. And just like that, he reached into his pocket. Not with a ring, not yet, with a letter, folded, worn, familiar. She recognized it instantly, her wedding vows, the ones she never got to read. He'd saved them. I never forgot these, he said. I kept thinking, one day, you'd want to finish what you started. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. She unfolded the paper slowly, her own handwriting staring back at her. It hurt, but in the best way, like reopening a healed wound just to remember how far she'd come. I don't want to read these anymore, she whispered. His face fell slightly, unsure. Because I want to write new ones. For you. For us. That's when he pulled out the second thing from his pocket. A ring. Simple. Elegant. Timeless. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a scene. He just held it out and said the words in the only way that felt real for them. No lies. No secrets. No running. Just me. Choosing you. Again and again. Will you marry me? And this time, standing in a quiet cafe with a pen in her hand and her story in the world, Isabel said yes. The ceremony wasn't in a church, it was in a garden. Small, intimate, soft piano playing in the background. A song she picked herself. The guests were close friends. No headlines, no drama. Just love, laughter, and a warm spring breeze. She wore a simple dress. He wore a quiet smile. And when they said their vows this time, they weren't filled with promises of perfection. They promised honesty, laughter, patience, They promised to tell the truth, even when it hurt, to fight fair, to stay, even on the days when love feels like work, and most of all, to never again let fear make their choices for them. Later that night, as they danced under string lights, Isabel looked up at the man she once thought was just a stranger in the back of a church. The man who saw her shattered and didn't look away. The man who made mistakes but never stopped trying to make things right. The man she chose, freely, fully, and forever. Matthew leaned in, whispering against her ear. "Do you remember the day I found you outside that chapel?" She smiled. "How could I forget? I remember thinking you looked like a woman who was about to fall apart, but I had no idea you'd be the one who put me back together." She rested her head on his chest, the music soft and slow. "Guess we both needed to be broken first," she said. "To find something real," he finished. Her book became a bestseller, not because it was scandalous, not because of the drama, but because it was honest. Because people saw themselves in her story, in the heartbreak, in the healing, in the second chance. And somewhere out there, a woman picked it up in a bookstore and read the line that ended it all. Sometimes the happiest ending is the one you never saw coming. The end. Now tell me, if you were in Isabel's place, would you have forgiven him or walked away? Let me know in the comments, and I'd really love to hear your heart on this one. Thanks for watching.